Is there a time that you can remember when you are asked to lead in prayer and immediately you go, oh no? Because it was difficult in the beginning to start praying. It's one thing to pray in your head, but it's another to pray out loud. And one thing that I notice, and especially helping in youth ministry out at Webster, I see that seeing a structure of a prayer and helping kids learn it, it's oftentimes we as adults can forget that. Yes, prayer is to communicate with God, but at times we treat prayer and God like a vending machine, where we keep asking request after request, and that's all we do. Lord, can you help me with the finances? Lord, can you show me what job to go to next? Lord, can you make sure our basement doesn't flood? So, I wanted to talk to you about a prayer model. Go ahead and go 2 slides. It's the prayer model called WAR, where you worship, you admit, and then you request. Worship, we just did that by praising God and singing to Him, by coming to Him and understanding that we are forgiven because of the grace and mercy that He gives, that there's nothing we can do to earn it, because He loves us, even though we fail time and time again. Admitting our faults of how we fail to Him. Going, Lord, I know I can do better here, and I'm sorry that I did that. And truly meaning it from your heart. And then going and requesting, if there are any by the time you get there. But what happens when we're in those prayers and we just treat God like a vending machine? What happens when we treat God like a tool to get things the way we want? That's the question I want us to look at today. So what happens when we treat God like a tool to get the results we want? Turn with me to 1 Samuel, and we're going to start in chapter 4. Today we're going to see 2 different ways that we can answer this, from 2 different perspectives. Alright, so in chapter 4, verse 1. Now the Israelites went out to fight against the Philistines. The Israelites camped at Ebenezer, and the Philistines at Aphek. The Philistines deployed their forces to meet Israel. And as the battle spread, Israel was defeated by the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 of them on the battle. You see, when the soldiers returned to the camp, the elders of Israel asked, "Why did the Lord bring defeat on us today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the Lord's covenant before the Philistines from Shiloh, so that he may go with us and save us from the hand of our enemies." So the people sent men to Shiloh, and they brought back the ark of the covenant of the Lord Almighty, who is enthroned between the cherubim. Now you see, Eli's 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were with the ark of the covenant of God. When the ark of the Lord's covenant came into the camp, all Israel raised such a great shout that the ground shook. Could you imagine that? The ground shaking just from your voices, not from the speakers around you, but from the voices of everyone praising God because He had came to help them defeat the Philistines, because they brought Him there. As we continue in verse 6, hearing the uproar, the Philistines had asked, "What is that shouting in the Hebrew camp?" When they learned that the ark of the Lord had come into the camp, the Philistines were afraid. "A god has come into the camp," they said. "Oh no! Nothing like this has happened before. We're doomed. Who will deliver us from the hand of these mighty gods? They are the gods who struck the Egyptians with all kinds of plagues in the wilderness." So the Philistines, talking to each other, said, "Be strong, Philistines, be men, or you will be subject to the Hebrews, as they have been to you. Be men and fight." You know what they're saying to each other? They're saying, grow up, be a man, get some hair on your chest, go fight. You don't want to be treated the way we've treated the Israelites, do you? You're stronger. So in verse 10, what happens? So the Philistines fought, and the Israelites were yet defeated, and every man fled to his tent. You see, the slaughter was very great, and Israel lost 30,000 foot soldiers. But not only that, in verse 11 we see that the ark of God was captured, and Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, died. You know what I hear here in this beginning part? Is that Israel took the approach of ready, fire, aim. Sounds a little backwards, doesn't it? If you were to do archery and do ready, fire, aim, would you get a bullseye every time? Not likely. You see, but what happened to the ark after it was captured? We can see that. Let's go into chapter 5. See, after the Philistines had captured the ark of God, they took it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then they carried the ark into Dagon's temple and set it beside Dagon. When the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, there was Dagon, fallen on his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. So what happened here is that the Philistines brought the ark in to their temple where they worshipped their god, their idol, and put the ark next to him, Dagon, as if the ark of God, God's holy place and dwelling, was beneath their God. But yet when they woke up the next morning, they saw their idol or their god bowing down to the ark. What'd they do? They took Dagon and put him in his place. But the following morning when they rose again, there was Dagon fallen on his face again on the ground before the ark of the Lord. His hands and his head had been broken off and were lying on the threshold. See, only his body remained. So God had knocked over their God not once but twice. And the second time he even knocked off the head and the hands of the statue, showing that idol, that statue of the Philistines, had no power. That God truly was in the ark. And that he was above all. In verse 6, we see that not only that, though, that the Lord's hand was heavy on the people of Ashdod in its vicinity. He brought devastation on them and afflicted them with tumors. You see, when the people of Ashdod saw what was happening, they said, "The ark of God of Israel must not stay here with us, because his hand is heavy on us and on our God." So they called together all the rulers of the Philistines and asked them, "What shall we do with the ark of God of Israel?" They answered, "Have the ark of God of Israel moved to Gath." So they did it. But after they had moved it, the Lord's hand was against the city, throwing it into a great panic. He afflicted the people of the city, both young and old, with an outbreak of tumors. So they sent the ark of God to Ekron. As the ark of God was entering Ekron, the people of Ekron cried out, "They have brought the ark of God of Israel around to us to kill us and our people." So they called together all the rulers of the Philistines and said, "Send the ark of God of Israel away. Let it go back to its place." So what was going on here is like we have this shiny new thing to the Philistines, to the community, because, hey, we won this. We beat Israel, and we've taken their shiny toy. And it's like as if that had been brought to Salina. And then sickness and illness was brought to the people of Salina, and they go, "Hey, whoa, where should we take this? Because of this new shiny thing, we're all getting sick." And their leaders in Salina say, "Okay, well, why don't you guys send it over to Minneapolis?" And then Minneapolis starts noticing the same sickness and everything going on. And then instead of asking, they're just like, okay, we're going to bring it here to Barnard. And all of us start going, whoa, 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 you're going to kill us. No, the ark needs to go back to where it came from because God is present in the ark. So what they do to address this? Because we see that the Philistines here did something a little different than Israel did. You see, when the ark started moving town to town to town, in the beginning, they asked their leaders. Whereas we saw in the very beginning, Israel didn't ask, but said, we will bring God and he will defeat the Philistines for us. And yet God didn't show up. They were defeated. So what happens here? Is God going to do the same thing? Or is he actually going to show up for Philistines because now they're asking questions? Let's find out. Continuing in chapter 6, verse 1. See, when the ark of the Lord had been in the Philistine territory 7 months, the Philistines called for their priests and their diviners and said, what shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Tell us how we should send it back to its place. They answered, if you return the ark of God of Israel, do not send it back to him without a gift. By all means, send a guilt offering to him. Then you will be healed, and you will know why his hand has not been lifted from among you. The Philistines asked, what guilt offering should we send him? They continue on to explain, send golden idols of the tumors and the mice that plagued your cities. And then they come up with a test to see if these plagues were truly from God. In verse 7, now then, get a new cart ready, with 2 cows that have been calved and have never been yoked. Hitch the cows to the cart, but take their calves away and pin them up. Take the ark of the Lord and put it on the cart. And in the chest beside it, put the gold objects you are sending back to him as a guilt offering. Send it on its way, but keep watching it. If it goes up to its own territory, towards Beth Shemesh, then the Lord has brought this great disaster on us. But if it does not, then we will know that it was not by his hand that struck us, but that it happened to us by chance. This took a couple times of reading for me to understand truly what is the test they're doing here. But I have a feeling some of you guys might actually understand the test already because you deal with cows and calves more than I do. If you have a new cow that has a calf and you take her away from her child, is she going to be okay with that right away? Or is she going to be defensive about it? Aggressive? And want to come back and find her baby? That's what the cow is going to do. She wants to be with her calf. So in here they're saying take 2 of them, not just 1 but 2. Once they've had their calves, yoke those 2 moms together. Put them on a cart and have them take the ark back to Israel. Now, if the ark goes back to Israel with no problem, no turning around, then it was God that plagued us. It was God that gave us this sickness. But if they come back, we know it was just by chance and we're making things up in our heads. So what happened? Verse 10. So they did this. They took 2 such cows and hitched them to the cart and pinned up their calves. They placed the ark of the Lord on the cart, and along with it the chest containing the gold rats and the models of the tumors. Then the cows went straight up towards Beth Shemesh, keeping on the road and lowing all the way. They did not turn to the right or to the left. You see, the rulers of Philistines followed them as far as the border of Beth Shemesh. Now the people of Beth Shemesh were harvesting their wheat in the valley, and they looked up and saw the ark, and they rejoiced. I want to pause here. They were harvesting their wheat. That means that the whole community was out there, because they weren't spoiled like we are to have machinery to help with that. It took the community to do it. So as they were all rejoicing, seeing the ark of God coming back, the cart came to the field of Joshua, Beth Shemesh. and there it stopped beside a large rock. You see, the people chopped up the wood of the cart and sacrificed the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. The Levites took down the ark of the Lord together with the chest containing the gold objects, and placed them on the large rock. On that day, the people of Beth-Shemesh offered burnt offerings and made sacrifices to the Lord. The 5 rulers of the Philistines saw this, and they returned to Ekron. They went, okay, it was God that was plaguing us. We have now returned him. In those offerings, we see in verse 17, these are the gold tumors the Philistines sent us as guilt offerings to the Lord. 1 each for Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. And the number of gold rats was according to the number of the Philistine towns belonging to the 5 rulers, the fortified towns with their country villages. The large rock on which the Levites set the ark of the Lord is a witness to this day in the field of Joshua. We see that the ark of God came back, and instantly Israel started remembering what to do. They started doing the offerings again. They started treating God like he was supposed to be treated. What made them switch their behavior? I want to go back a little bit for us. So far back, we go into chapter 2. Now, at this time, this was when the man of God had came to Eli. And he was telling Eli, hey, you've talked with your sons, but you've taken no action. And this is what God was communicating to Eli because he didn't take action of disciplining his children. And what happens to your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, will be assigned to you. They will both die on that same day. Remember, this was because Hophni and Phinehas were wicked. They were priests that were to keep the laws of God, but they weren't. They were taking women at the temple doors. They were taking the meat that was to be sacrificed to God in the way that they wanted, not in the way that they were commanded in the book of Leviticus. They weren't doing their responsibilities the way God commanded. So what happened? Did God fulfill this? He did. And we can see that by going back to chapter 4, verse 12. That day, a Benjaminite ran from the battle line right after Philistine had defeated Israel, and went to Shiloh with his clothes torn and dust on his head. When he arrived, there was Eli sitting on his chair by the side of the road, watching because his heart feared for the ark of God. When the man entered the town and told what had happened, the whole town sent up a cry. Eli heard the outcry and asked, "What is the meaning of this uproar?" The man hurried over to Eli, who was 98 years old, and whose eyes had failed so that he could not see. He told Eli, "I have just come from the battle line. I fled from it this very day." Eli asked, "What happened?" The man who brought the news replied, "Israel fled before the Philistines, and the army has suffered heavy losses. Also, your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God has been captured." When he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell backwards off of his chair by the side of the gate. You see, his neck was broken and he died, for he was an old man and he was heavy. He had led Israel for 40 years. His daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant and near the time of delivery. When she heard the news that the ark of God had been captured and that her father-in-law and her husband were both dead, she went into labor and gave birth, but was overcome by her labor pains. As she was dying, the woman attending her said, "Don't despair, you have given birth to a son." But she did not respond or pay any attention. She named the boy Ichabod, saying, "The glory has departed from Israel," because the capture of the ark of God and the deaths of her father-in-law and her husband. She said, "The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured." they realized what happened. The holy dwelling place, the ark of the Lord, at that time, was captured. God was taken from them. And he went to the Philistines. But we hadn't finished our story yet either about when the ark came back. Because remember, it sounded like they had learned from Eli dying, from his daughter-in-law, declaring the glory of God has departed Israel, realizing God is gone. What now? Well, when they get the ark back, they start praising. But then what do? Did they fully learn everything? Let's look at verse 19 in chapter 6. But God struck down some of the inhabitants of Beth-Shemesh, putting 70 of them to death because they looked into the ark of the Lord. The people mourned because of the heavy blow the Lord had dealt them. That doesn't sound like a community that learned. Because they were commanded back in the book of Exodus to not look into the ark. But yet, a huge group of them did. And yet the Lord killed them all, reminding them that yes, even though nothing happened and I didn't defeat Philistine for you, I am still here in my dwelling place. But what happens next? What does Israel do because of this reminder? Do they learn? Let's take a look in verse 20. And the people of Beth-Shemesh asked, "Who can stand in the presence of the Lord, this holy God? To whom will the ark go up from here?" Then they sent messengers to the people of Kiriath-Jearim, saying, "The Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come and take it up to your town." So the men of Kiriath-Jearim came and took up the ark of the Lord. They brought it to Abinadab's house on the hill, and consecrated Eleazar his son to guard the ark of the Lord. So what did they do? They put God in a shed. They put him back up on the shelf because he was still a tool that they thought they could use. So what was our question at the beginning of today? Our question was, what happens when we treat God like a tool to get the results that we want? What happens is we lose the fullness of God's presence. Yes, God was still in the ark in every situation that we went through today. But because Israel was not following the commands that God gave them a lesson. The Philistines defeated them because they did ready, fire, aim, and didn't consult their priests or consult God. What should we do first? When the ark went to the Philistines, they kind of started by consulting with each other. They ended up going to their priests and then the diviners, and they said, send them back with guilt offerings. They had a little bit more knowledge of the commands that Israel was supposed to follow and did it more than Israel did. And they followed it up with a test to learn that God really was the one doing everything to them. And then yet when Israel was glorious and happy, because God was back, the ark is here, they let curiosity destroy them again. We lose the fullness of God. He may still be there, like in this situation, in a shed or on a shelf. Still watching, still in the back corner, but still sad when we choose the sins that we choose. So remember, God's not a tool. He's our Father. He is our Lord. That's what happens when we lose him, is that we don't get his fullness. So I pray that you remember, if anything from today, that God is not a tool, but he is Lord, the great I am.